Good morning and welcome to Unity of the Blue Ridge. We want to thank you for joining us this morning from wherever you are. It's a beautiful day here in Western North Carolina, and I trust it's a beautiful day wherever you are. We began by lighting a candle together. You know, it always reminds us that wherever we are in our respective places, that we are shining our lights. And even though you can extinguish one candle, you never extinguish light itself. And so it is within our life. I invite you to join me in an opening prayer this morning. We join together this morning in that spirit of what it is to really be here now. The great I am that I am. The part of each and every one of us that is greater than any individual life and yet is the nucleus of every life. Today we open to a greater understanding and experience of who we are as an expression of God, of all that is. And how it's the moments of our lives that create the days of our lives, that create our whole life. We give thanks for this opportunity to be here together. And so for this sacred opportunity, we say thank you, God, and so it is. Amen. Again, I want to thank you for joining us this beautiful morning. 3 important questions for you. What's the purpose of your life? What is your single greatest pursuit? And are you actively endeavoring to be a beneficial presence? Well, that's what we want to talk about today when we look at the context of our life. But before we jump in, a couple of things for you. 3 things really. You saw some announcements as we opened up, but I encourage you to go to our website. We're adding to that constantly, so take a look at our website. There's even some new things starting this week. Also, just to let you know that our amazing youth ed team, Reverend Gabby and Reverend Barbara Ann, are putting together a weekly video for our youth, and it's really enjoyable for adults too. So I encourage you to go to our website or go to our Facebook page, and you can open up the youth lesson for this week. Our music director, pianist Richard Shulman, is going to share a check-in hello with you this morning, and then we have a song by Mary Kay Williams, and then I'll be right back. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Darlene asked me to talk about what I'm doing to keep myself filled with spirit. And I've been cooking, I'm enjoying that. And I have a big project in the backyard, cutting back vines, the ivy vines, which are getting even longer than my hair. But mostly I've been doing music. So I'd like to share a little music with you.
won't deny the worst you could say about me. But I'm not defined by mistakes I have made, because God says of me, I am not who I was. I'm being remade, I am new. I am blessed and holy, and I am dearly loved. had to be. I had to give them both up because neither were willing to ever believe I am not who I was. I'm being remade. I am new. I am blessed and holy, and I am dearly loved. I am new. I am new. Too long have I lived in this shadow of shame, believing that there was no way I could change. But the one who is making everything new doesn't see me the way that I do. Doesn't see me the way that I do. I am not who I was. I'm being remade. I am new. I am blessed and holy, and I am dearly loved. I am new. I am new. I am not who I was. I'm being remade. I am new. I am new. Dead to the old self, I'm coming alive. I am new. I am new. Created, beloved, expressing the Christ, made in the image of the giver of life, blessed and holy, reborn and remade, accepted and worthy, this is our new name. Created, beloved, expressing the Christ, made in the image of the giver of life, blessed and holy, reborn and remade, accepted and worthy, this is our new name. This is who we are now.
Wow. Mary Kay Williams, All Things New. What a beautiful, beautiful song. I saw a really thought-provoking question this week. It said, when you emerge from the isolation, will you come out as a monk, a hunk, a chunk, or a drunk? And lots of people responded with things such as, well, I may be a chunky monk or a hunky drunk or whatever. But, when we talk about all things being made new, today I want to talk about, I think what Annie Dillard said best when she said, how we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. How are we filling our days, our thoughts, our hours, our weeks? Because that becomes our life. Jesus really taught that and used the analogy of fruit to look at the fruit of our life, the fruit of our spirit, and said that you'll know a tree by the fruit that it bears. And so today we want to look at our habits, our traditions, and our rituals. And essentially, are our habits and traditions and our rituals, are they enhancing our life, enriching our life, empowering our life, bringing forth our spiritual potential? Or Are they undermining? Are they disempowering, either consciously or unconsciously? It's when we bring awareness to the level of our habits, our rituals, our traditions, that we really begin to realize that we can use these things to work for us, or either essentially we can become sort of an unconscious slave, if you will, to our habits and our routines and our rituals perhaps. One of the things when I think about our habits is that it's good news that we can choose them, we can change them, and of course we can also be unconscious of them. But you know, if you look at a person's life, you don't hopefully base their life on one isolated incident. We can all do one thing one time. But if we look at our life, or any life, as Jesus was talking about the fruit of it, if we look at the habits, the routines, the rituals in our life, it really tells us a lot about what we value, because it's through our habits and our routines and our rituals that we're investing ourselves, we're investing our time. It's the way that we demonstrate our values through all of these things. I was thinking this week about habits and rituals and routines, and I remembered at the first or second week that we were sequestered in isolation, I got a text from my oldest nephew, and at the end of it, he put in quotation marks, "Be happy, be safe." Now that means something very special to me, and I didn't know that he knew that, because my little Yorkie poo, Zoe Grace, who I had for about 14 years, I lost her last year, but I got her when she was 6 weeks old, and this little teeny puppy, every time I left her, I had this habit of saying, "Be happy, be safe." And it didn't take very long at all before she knew what that meant. And for her whole life, I never said those words except if I was getting ready to leave. I would say, "Be happy, be safe." And she would go get in her bed, and she just knew that I was going to be gone for a while. And so when my nephew sent me a text that said, "Be happy, be safe," I said, "How do you know that?" And he said, "Well, remember when I stayed with you, he came and visited a couple of weeks one summer when I lived in Maui. And he said, I observed that every time you left Zoe, you said, 'Be happy, be safe.' And he said, I always thought it was very comforting. And so I wanted to tell you, be happy, be safe." There's things that we may be conscious of or we may be unconscious, but we all have little things that we do, whether it's the way we get up in the morning. Maria Kondo, the author of The Tidy Up, gets up every morning around 6:30. She opens her windows and burns incense. That's kind of her habit, of her ritual of starting a fresh day. Serena Williams, the tennis player, has a habit of bouncing the ball 5 times every time before her first serve and only 2 times before her second serve. She also, incidentally, wears the same socks through the whole tournament. So, you know, we have these things that we do for whatever reason, but these habits and routines and customs, traditions and rituals, are they really serving us? And they really can. They can be reminders, helpful reminders of what's important. They can bring comfort and order to our days and to our lives. I have a colleague friend, he's a minister, and he has two younger children. And we were talking recently, and he was talking about, you know, how over the years it's been interesting for him as a father to make the transition to working at home, and now especially with kids in the home. And he said he used to find it really challenging of how to ever turn off work and be present to his family, and his wife and his kids were complaining, you know, "Dad, you're always working." And so he began to think about, you know, what did he do as when he was younger? And he said, well, when I was younger, when I got home from school or college, or when I first got off of work before I was married, I'd go shoot hoops. He would play basketball. And he said that always just helped me let go of my day. But he said now that I was a father, I couldn't do that. But one day he had a bright idea. As he finished up his day in his office, he took his to-do sheet and he ripped it up and he wadded it up in a tight ball, and he went over to the trash can and he said, "Slam dunk, I'm done." And he said today that's a saying in his household that he says that now his kids will say, "Daddy, have you slam dunked, I'm done?" That we can create these habits or rituals or routines that serve us to be sort of a bridge between remember the intention that you made And how are you going to live it out in your actions? That ideally, that's what our habits and our traditions and our rituals are doing. That they're anchoring us in a deeper purpose. Like, why are you doing this? What really matters most? What is the purpose of your life? What is the single greatest pursuit of your life? And are you actively endeavoring to be a beneficial presence? And how could your habits and traditions and rituals enhance that? And how are they possibly undermining or taking you in the opposite direction? Our habits can, serve us in obtaining our goals and living the quality, the characteristics out in our life that we choose to, or they truly can undermine us if we're not careful there. There's a powerful scripture that to me says this beautifully. It comes from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 15. It says, some of the Pharisees and teachers of the law came to Jesus from Jerusalem, and they asked, why do your disciples break the traditions of the elders? And it said, and Jesus replied, why do you break the spiritual law of God for the sake of your traditions? Now really let that sink in. Why do you break the covenant of your soul? Why do we undermine what matters most spiritually for the sake of our traditions, for the sake of our habits, for the sake of our routine? And I think this time in particular, when we certainly, many people, most of us are sequestered, we certainly have had an interruption in our routine. I don't think any place on earth that is not feeling the implications of making changes of behavior. And so perhaps a part of what the universe is serving up is saying, let's take a look at our habits, let's take a look at our traditions and our routines and our rituals and ask, how are they serving us? And when we emerge, not only as a monk or a hunk or a chunk or a drunk, or a skunk with our hair, when we emerge, that we really harness it and use it as an opportunity to set into motion perhaps some new ways of being. So some of the things that we can think about when we're doing this, ideally our habits and our traditions are, again, they're a bridge between what is the intention and then how am I truly being? And this bridge in between are the things that ideally we create that help us go and act out in the direction. They're bringing forth more of our God-given potential. They're calling forth our highest self. They're calling forth our greater qualities versus those things that undermine us or cause us to just go asleep, basically. If we look at our habits and our rituals, one of the things that they can certainly do in a way that undermines is they can cause us to become inflexible, stuck, or rigid. We can hide behind them. You can be driving in your car and have a habit of every time you see a person asking for money, a homeless person or a person on the street, you can have a habit of playing with your radio or cleaning out your car. Or you can create a different practice of making eye contact and choosing in that moment, how am I to respond? There's so many unconscious ways, so many ways that we just sort of go unconscious and hide behind these routines. When the goal of life is to be fully present. The scriptures talk about routines that Jesus had in going apart for a while. It was a constant habit that he had to pray, to have time apart, to enter that time of communion. He also taught his disciples a powerful habit when he said, shake the dust. When you leave a place, shake the dust off your feet. It was basically saying, just shake yourself and remember what you're responsible for and what's not yours to carry, to shake it off, that these things can serve us or they can lead to our becoming unconscious. There's a story about a priest, a minister, and a guru who were talking about their traditions. And they got into an argument about whose ritual was actually the proper one, which was the best prayer posture that should always be followed. And the priest said, well, of course it's kneeling. You really should kneel to connect with God. And the minister said, no, it's standing with your hands toward the heaven. Of course, that's the best way to connect with God. And the guru said, no, it's to sit in a full lotus position. That's the best way to open up to the universe, to all that is. Well, listening to them was a telephone repairman up on a pole. And he said, excuse me, fellas, but the best praying I've ever done is hanging upside down from a telephone pole. And I like that story because it points out how we can get so stuck in the form that we really forget what it's about. I've often said, and I don't even remember the first place I heard this, but if you look at the scriptures, the way Jesus healed, there were very few things that he did the same. One powerful example is of two blind people. Jesus had an occasion to heal one blind person by putting mud in their eyes. And then there was another occasion where another blind person was healed, but there was no mud put in their eyes. And I can just imagine the first person saying, now this is how you do it. If you put mud in your eyes, you can be healed. And this person saying, oh, no, it does not involve mud. You better not put mud in your eyes to be healed. And I've said that was the first two denominations, the Muddites, Neophytes, that those two things of this is how we do things. This is the only way that we can do things, that we get stuck into a habit, a way of doing things and thinking that it's the only way. And so a question for us is, where have we gotten inflexible or stuck? Where are we perhaps hiding behind the practice and we've really forgotten what was the purpose, what is the ultimate purpose that we're aiming to connect with here? The beautiful thing about our habits, our traditions, just like my friend who slam dunk, I'm done, you can create new ones all the time. Be happy, be safe. You can create things that remind you, you can change them. We can cultivate habits that cause us to really understand and live out our connection and our potential. And we can bring awareness to the ways that we're not. I've had an inordinate amount of text and calls during this time of being in isolation. I think people are struggling for different reasons and are being in relationship with people on really intimate levels. I have their permission to share without their names, but I had one couple reach out to me during the second week of the isolation. And they said, we love each other, we're on our spiritual paths, we're doing fine, but we could use a little help because we're just about to drive each other crazy. And one of them said, I've always known that my partner, they said, always puts the attention back on them. And I said, well, could you give me an example? And they said, yes. And the first person said, if I say, honey, my back hurts, the other person says, you know what, my back's hurting too. Or if the person says, oh, I am tired, the other person says, you know what, I've been feeling tired too. Or if this person says, you know what, my neck is hurting, then they would respond by saying, my neck doesn't hurt, but my knee's been hurting. And this person was complaining, saying they never listen to me. They never make time for what I've got going on. And being in isolation was really magnifying that. So we talked about that and some other things. But one of the things that we came up with is we said, well, for the person who immediately jumps to, yeah, and I've got this, yeah, and I've got this, oh, yeah, and I've got this. I said, well, what could you do that would allow you to pause and to just really take in what they're saying? So what they decided to do, they said, well, I'm going to create a 2-minute rule that the next time I hear her say, my back hurts, I'm going to, for 2 minutes, be present to what she's saying. And then after 2 minutes, I can say, yeah, my back hurts too. So they decided to do that, and they just checked in with me last week, and it was kind of funny because the person who was practicing this said that they laughed out loud, because this person will say, my back hurts, and this one would have to catch their tongue and start trying to listen for 2 minutes, and would literally start giggling and say, I want to tell you so badly that my shoulder hurts, but I'm doing everything I can to listen. But really, over the course of just a couple of weeks, had been able to cultivate something completely new. But what really spoke to me is the person who had implemented the 2 minutes. For 2 minutes, I'm going to listen to you. What they said to me that was really remarkable is they said, we are creating connection on a level that we've never experienced. And the one person said, and the interesting thing about it is I am realizing how many ways, other ways in my life, I've been creating blocks because I've been jumping to an assumption, or I've been jumping to this. And so that's a pretty simple, in some ways, example, and yet it can yield profound results. Because ultimately the goal is, am I creating connection with the God of my being, with the Spirit within? Am I creating connection with my innate divine potential, with what I'm here to bring forth? Am I creating connections with people that I agree with and people that I disagree with? Am I creating heart connections, or am I creating blocks? Now, when you understand it at that level, it's no longer a small thing. It's it's what our life is about. And so, how are you consciously or unconsciously creating connection? Connecting with your soul force. Connecting with your higher potentiality. And then how are you either consciously or unconsciously creating blocks, undermining, having habits and ways of being that really you'd rather not have? And the good news is we can change. The great I am that I am, the Christ presence, the Spirit within each and every one of us, that's what we're here for. Creating that positive change. There's a story of Cammy Walker, C-A-M-I, Cammy Walker. Cammy was 33 years old when she got married. And exactly 1 month after getting married, she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. It was devastating for her, and the symptoms were, she'd been having, of course, some symptoms, but the symptoms began to become debilitating very, very quickly. She was struggling, her new husband was struggling, their relationship was struggling, and she was very quickly going under. And without even really knowing it, and probably a lot because she was in pain, she was developing this habit of just complaining. And she knew that it wasn't a good habit, but she didn't know how to get out. And so she remembered a neighbor a woman that she had lived near years ago, and this particular woman was from South Africa. She was a South African medicine woman, and her name is Mbali. And so she said she called Mbali to talk to her, and she said, we'd had some wonderful conversations, and so I thought I could just pour my heart out, and she would be a fresh audience and would sympathize. And Mbali held that beautiful space. But then she said, "Child, do you want a prescription?" And Cammy said, "Do I want a prescription?" "Child, do you want a prescription?" And she said, "Well, yes, I want a prescription." She said, "In the next 29 days, give away 29 things. One thing a day, give it away." And Cammy said she thought, what in the world does that have to do with what we're talking about? She said, just do it, and then call me back. And so she said she had nothing to lose. And Mbali explained to her it didn't have to be anything grand. And so over the next 29 days, and incidentally, she actually went into the hospital right after that conversation, but she said she committed to practice it for 29 days, cultivating a habit of giving away something at least once a day. She said it may have been a hug, back when you could hug. It may have been a tissue to someone. It may have been spare change, depending on where she was in the situation. But it's sort of like Benjamin Franklin is said that He had a practice that every morning when he woke up, he said, "What good shall I do today?" And then his practice every evening when he went to bed was, "What good did I do today?" Well, Cammy began to think about, what will I give away today? And at the end of her day, what did I give away today? She said within 29 days it was remarkable. And when she called Mbali back, Mbali explained to her, she said, you needed to shift your focus. You needed to understand that you are a vehicle through which the spirit of generosity can work. You are a vehicle through which the spirit of life can work. You are a vehicle through which the whole Holy Spirit works. And if every day you make it your intention to give from that place, you create a habit of giving from that and engaging that. She said, it may not heal you, but you will be whole. And I love that. Cammy Walker went on to write a book about that, and she still has MS, but the symptoms have been manageable, and her whole life has been transformed because she learned to create habits that would engage her potential. And so what can we do now? What kind of habits can we engage that can call us higher? The final point that I want to make today is another true story about someone that I greatly admire. I had the opportunity, I think it was 2 years ago, to hear Father Gregory Boyle. Father Gregory, he has a wonderful book called Tattoos on the Heart. He's a Jesuit priest who founded Homeboys Industry. He works with gangs in California and Los Angeles. But back in the late or the mid-'80s, when Father Gregory was the pastor of Dolores Mission, he tells a beautiful story. And he tells about that in their church, they decided that they would open up their church to homeless people, that they could come in during the week at night and they would allow them to sleep. They said that it grew very quickly. Within a short period of time, they would sometimes have as many as 100 men at night sleeping in their church, and then they'd file out in the morning. And so Father Gregory writes in his book, Tattoos on the Heart, he said there was always lingering evidence of their presence. Come Sunday morning, we'd foo-foo the place as best we could. We would sprinkle I love my carpet on the rugs and vacuum like crazy. We'd strategically place potpourri and airwick to combat the lingering reminder that nearly 100 men had spent the night. We'd light incense before 7:30, the 7:30 Mass crowd arrived, but as soon as they came in, they were grumbling and complaining. So he said one morning he began his homily with the most unusual question. He said, ladies and gentlemen, I want to ask you today a very important question. What does the church smell like? He said people kind of looked around and avoided looking at him, and he said, no, seriously, what does the church smell like? He said, Dan Raphael, an old man who didn't care what people thought, yelled out, it smells like feet. Excellent. Why does it smell like feet? Because homeless men slept here last night, says a woman. Well, said Father Gregory, why do we let that happen? It's what we've committed to do. Well, why would anyone commit to let 100 homeless men sleep here? It's what Jesus would do. Well then, what does the church smell like now? A man stands up and says, it smells like commitment. The place begins to cheer. And Guadalupe raises her arms wildly and says, Hello, rosas. It smells like roses. The packed church roars with laughter. And a newfound kinship that embraced someone else's odor as their own. The stink in the church hadn't changed, but how the people saw it changed them. Our habits, our traditions, our rituals, the power is not in them. The power is in how they bring us in connection with what matters, or the power is the way we allow them to disempower us. Will you commit with me this week to bring awareness to your habits, your routines, your traditions, your rituals? And would you be willing to find one that is undermining or is just not serving you, or perhaps you've outgrown it? Would you be able to find one and implement something that allows you to change it? And as a second thing, would you be willing to cultivate a new habit or routine or ritual? It may be slam dunk, I'm done, or good morning, sun. Whatever, it doesn't have to be grandiose, but it's meant to bring out a greater sense of connection with the truth of who you are. It's meant to deepen your connection with others. It's meant to deepen your connection with your own spiritual power and your own truth and goodness. And it's certainly not meant to undermine it. I invite you to join me. Just take a moment together, if you're comfortable and safe to do so, to close your eyes. Let's begin by shaking the dust off of your hands and feet. There's a physical movement, a symbolic act that reminds us of our power and responsibility to choose what we carry, what we interact with, where we give and invest ourselves, what's ours to do and what's not ours to do. We shake the dust off and let go of all that has come before. Not just a little shake it off, but I mean a big shake it off. That it's a new day, it's a new opportunity, this is a new breath. And so we shake it off. And how am I being called to bring greater awareness to the routines of my life? To know that how we live our days is how we live our life. Help me to identify one thing that creates blocks or is undermining my sense of connection and empowerment. Just one thing. And guide me in steps to take to let that go and to set something new in motion. Something that develops my potential, something that reminds me of the truth of who I am, something that reminds me of the truth of who all people are. Help me identify something that I need to let go. And let me set in place something that will serve me in my call to serve others. And so we lean into this ancient prayer that says, our Creator, who dwells in spirit, potential, all that is, the very nature of which is holy and wholeness. Let the reality of my wholeness, my spirit, let that come. Let my willingness flow from that truth. on earth, in my physical reality as it is in spirit potential. May I be mindful that every day is given to me, and that my very heartbeat, my very life is a reflection of the one life. May I remember to let go and release, to forgive, to release the things that entangle me, that I may be free. May I be guided and led in ways that are right and righteous for me, as a reflection of all that is. And may I remember that all of life, that all power and goodness flow from the one source, and that is the source of my life. And so in the name and in the nature of all that is and all that is holy, we say thank you. I want to thank you for joining in today. I look forward to hearing about your newfound habits and traditions and rituals. May you have a wonderful week, and as we begin to close out, we have another video from you from our board president with her donkeys. They're not to be missed. This is always a lot of fun. And then a closing song by our very own Cat Williams and our Unity Band. You are a blessing. May you be blessed.
Hi, I'm Ellen Winter, reading again from The Wisdom of Donkeys about author Andy Merrifield's adventures with his rental donkey, Gregory. If I was walking this uphill trail alone without Gregory, I'd likely pace at twice the speed, perhaps even faster. But what would be the point of that, and with whom would I talk then? With a donkey, I'm compelled to go at their pace, to enter into their way of doing things. It's stop and go all the while. That's how it is with a donkey. I have to learn patience, to quell my impatience and frustration, my desire to hurtle along, to overtake, to beat my horn, to tear around the bend, to curse any dawdler who blocks my path. Things work differently with a donkey on a dirt trail. Patience becomes a daydream that gently rocks from side to side, like a baby's cradle, or like a sailboat on a windless sea. It's the gift of relishing the rhythm of precise steps, of treading slower, yet going farther, of treasuring the present moment, making it endure longer, stretching it out in all its glorious fullness. May you take the time, enjoy patience, and treasure the present moment this week.
Sunset lightning in my bones, push me to the edge, but my will is stone, because I believe in a better way. Fools will be fools and wise will be wise, but I look at this world, I look it straight in the eyes, because I believe in a better way. Oh yes, I believe in a better way. What good is a man who won't take a stand? What good is a cynic with no better plan? I believe in a better way. Yes, I believe in a better way. make it a better way. I believe in a better way. I feel it coming. Oh. I say I believe in a better way. Oh, it's coming, it's coming. I believe in a better way. Take it there, Betsy, take it. Woo! I believe in a better way. A better way for you, a better way for me. I believe in a better way. Yeah, I believe in a better way. I believe. In a better
Thank you.